Very pleased to have with us on the program right now, live from Washington, D.C., Congressman Paul Gosar, Republican from Arizona. Congressman, thank you for your time this afternoon.
Oh, you're welcome, Cam. Thanks for keeping this in the spotlight.
Absolutely. And we'll talk about the assault weapons ban, quote-unquote assault weapons ban, introduced by your colleagues. But I've got to ask you as well about some other breaking news that I think has largely been overshadowed by Senator Feinstein, as well as non-Second Amendment topics like Senator Kerry's testimony as he's nominated for Secretary of State. The resignation of Lanny Breuer, the head of the criminal division of the Department of Justice, occurred today. This is not a chastisement of Lanny Breuer, we're told. I'm sure he's going to get, a glowing send-off by the Attorney General. But I've got to ask you, do you have any doubt in your mind that that Fast and Furious and the role that Lanny Breuer played in Fast and Furious is one of the reasons why he is walking out of the Department of Justice?
Oh, without a doubt, Cam. When you take the very crux of us finding out about this, and then the letter that was sent to Senator Grassley, it had to be rescinded because they actually knew about it. And Lanny Breuer is holding the case. In fact, an email that we got from Lanny Breuer from him in Mexico, the same date that the letter was delivered to Senator Grassley, shows that they were proposing gun running schemes with the Mexican government. So an all-out lie. And so I'm sure that the DOJ will send him off in good spirits. But everybody needs to realize that it was Lanny Breuer who went back in and looked at Operation Wide Receiver, knowing that there was problems with it, but still went forward.
Yeah, Operation Wide Receiver was an operation that was similar to, but not identical to, Operation Fast and Furious that occurred back in 2007. And Lanny Breuer said when he went back and he looked and he realized that this gun walk-in had occurred, he did nothing. He did not look to see if there were any other operations coming out of that office or any other offices where gun walking was taking place. There was really no sense of urgency once he had discovered that this had taken place during the previous administration, despite the fact that he and other members of the DOJ had talked about what a huge concern this was for them.
Absolutely, and he actually had reports that were given to him, in which he basically just flew over them. Second of all, is the Inspector General's report is hardly glowing in regards to the affidavits for the wiretaps. They point to Lanny Breuer stating that he should have known better, that interceding at that point should have occurred. But as far as I'm concerned, this is well overdue, Cam. The problem is that it does not give him, like Monopoly, you get to go past jail, collect $200, and not have to do any time. I think what we have to do is get the facts that the DOJ has been withholding. I want to see us proceed, with our contempt charges to get the information, to interview the witnesses, and come to our transparent so that everybody, both in America and Mexico, understands the ramifications.
Absolutely.
And I think the one thing we really got to make sure that everybody knows, Cam, is this Operation Wide Receiver was done in collaboration with the Mexican government on a smaller scale. Operation Fast and Furious was not. In fact, we just abhorred even talking to the Mexican government. And when they asked about these guns showing up, they were misdirected and misguided. And so there was cover-up in this. And, I also continue to fail to talk about how wonderful and how great our federal firearms licensees were in this, because they followed the letter of the law to the T. We've got plenty of emails, texts, letters that they said that they sent to the DOJ, the ATF, stating that they had problems, and there was problems here, and this something wrong here. Wrong is going on, particularly when you have an agency that allows you to sell firearms, but is also telling you to sell them to people that should not be able to purchase them, like drug cartel members and illegal individuals that are not legal citizens of this country.
Talking with Congressman Paul Gosar, Republican from Arizona. And Congressman, I understand you may not have had a chance to see the text of the legislation. I've not had a chance to see the actual text of the legislation introduced by Senators Feinstein and Schumer and Durbin, as well as your colleague in the House, Representative McCarthy, today. But we know we know a lot here. 158 firearms banned by name, a brand new redefining of the term assault weapon, so that it is a semi-automatic firearm capable of accepting a detachable magazine that could hold hold more than 10 rounds and has one quote-unquote military-style feature. Two-part question here. One, what are you hearing from your constituents? And two, are you inclined to support any of these gun control measures that your anti-gun colleagues have offered?
Well, first of all, our phone has been ringing off the hook, stating that it's interesting that the president and the secretaries and attorney generals get protection from armed guards when the American public does not. When you look at the right to protect ourselves, not just from an intruder, but for a heinous government, that's what our Second Amendment was all about. I personally, looking at seeing that actually come out of the Senate, I like to see how they're going to get the votes, because this is going to have ramifications, for those, particularly those senators representing red states that are up for re-election, and those are the Democrats I'm talking about. American people want their Second Amendment, and they want accountability. I think there's parts that, and I've voiced my concern in regards to mental health. I mean, this is an opportunity for us not to put mental health as a back burner, but in the front burner. The last four, if I'm not mistaken, of these horrible acts were created with folks that had diagnoses of schizophrenia. And, you look, there's so many tragedies, Cam. And what we ought to be doing is, and I look at the stigma, of this mom whose son committed this hideous act in Connecticut. Mm-hmm. Now, here's a broken home. Here's a single mom that is having to deal with a special needs child. He's growing older. There's a stigma of mental health, so you don't address a lot of cases, a lot of people to make it publicly known. And when that problem gets bigger than she can handle, she's going to institutionalize this and something snaps. We've got a number of our veterans that are suffering from PTSD. What we ought to do is address it. And what I find offensive is on the other side of the aisle, here in government oversight, we saw the disrespect of the mental health aspect in the state of New York that fleeced the Medicaid funds and the American taxpayer for $30 billion over the last 2 decades in regards to mental health when it wasn't truly delivered in an appropriate fashion. And I think we've got to come to have a point of accountability and personal responsibility and making sure that we remove the stigma of mental disease. And I think the other thing we also have to do is that when you have a dynamic economy, a lot of the pressure cooker issues come off the forefront, and it doesn't push people into such hideous acts. So from that standpoint, I'm all in favor of taking the stigma of mental health and bringing it to the forefront. But I'm not in favor of this government taking away my Colt, my Remington, or my Ruger. Nothing's going to get between me and my Ruger.
Congressman, thank you so much for your time, sir. Great talking to you today. Hope we can do it again very soon.
Cam, always a pleasure, and sorry I had to sign off the last time the way I did.
That's quite all right. We understand that you're a busy guy and Congress is in session. We do appreciate your availability. Congressman Paul Gosar from Arizona joining us here on NRA News Cam and Company.